Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Arrow. So in this episode, the premise of the episode was basically a vigilante called, Vigilante is kind of taking over, taking out criminals. Which I love how, quickly it comes up to the whole thing of, because everyone, even Felicity, is like, well, these guys are kind of bad guys. Should we really be getting involved and worried about this? And then, the rest of the team is agreeing, and Oliver's like, wait, really? Okay, you guys got all pissy when you found out I was the Hood and I was dropping bodies like crazy back then. And it's like, so you can't have it both ways. So what do you want? You got pissy about me killing people, being all vigilante-like, and now it's like, now you're okay with this guy's like, make up your damn minds. I mean, granted, I guess because in their perspective too, it's kind of like back then, it's like, in the grand scheme of things, people were evil, but at the same time, it's like, on a lower scale, they weren't that evil because it was like they were just part of a collective that ended up doing something really bad, but being part of Malcolm Merlin's team and everything. Which, side note, I'm surprised he hasn't popped up yet. We haven't seen him at all. I wonder what is he up to. I mean, granted, I guess with everything being as it is, because he got involved in all that, and I guess it's like he can't really be around Star City right now because Oliver will essentially kick his ass because he knows he can't stay for Thea because Thea's not going to want him. It's like, because everything he's done has always been for the sake of Thea, but it's just, I mean, that's not worked out for him. That's who it was. Oh my goodness. Okay. I just remember something that was connected to Legends of Tomorrow's. It just clicked in my head. I mean, go ahead and spoil it then. Malcolm, I forgot, they were saying, he's going to be part of the Legion of Doom. It didn't click in my head. I was trying for the longest time. I was like, who is that other person? I know one of the people that hasn't popped up yet. But I was like, there was someone else that I heard someone talk about, but Malcolm, he was one of the people for the Legion of Doom on Legends of Tomorrow. So, nevertheless, that's not important right now. But this whole situation does put things in perspective for Oliver, because to him it's kind of like, we're not doing our job well enough. The fact of the matter is, yeah, he's a vigilante and whatnot, but it's like, if he exists because obviously what we're doing doesn't work. He's been working at this since he came back from Lian. Those 5 years he was gone. Because you can't always say just Lian Yu since he wasn't on Lian Yu the entire time. But the 5 years he was gone since coming back to Starling City, then now Star City, it's like nothing's changed. Crime is still running rampant and stuff like that. He hasn't made a big dent. And then everyone else is like, are you crazy? Oliver, you saved the city multiple times. I mean, you stopped the League of Assassins from destroying it. You stopped Malcolm from destroying it. I mean, granted, he still destroyed quite a bit part of the city, but it's just like, you stopped Slade. It's like you've literally saved this city multiple times from just being invaded and destroyed. So it's kind of like, cut yourself a little slack. But it's like, if we were doing our job well enough, there wouldn't be someone out there dressed up to be a vigilante trying to make a difference. I mean, it's to the point where it's interesting because I like it when it's a clash of beliefs, not just fists, but also a clash of beliefs of people. You have a situation where you have two people fighting the same war, just different ways and approaches for it. Because Oliver, for the longest time, has always been, because of Tommy, wanted to do things the right way. And, like I brought up last episode, the whole killing everything kind of resurged because of him killing Dark, and he kind of hadn't stopped then. But now he's kind of like, no, he's back on that path that he's like, no, that's not the right way to do things. Interestingly enough, he got it from Susan, who brought up the fact is, she was like, oh yeah, I have a contact or something in Russia looking up something for me, which is like, I'm guessing she is getting someone to properly verify the whole Bratva thing, which in this episode we interestingly see her and Oliver getting closer and everything, which is kind of leading towards my other thought that she's going to get closer to Oliver first and then kind of spring on him. I hope that's not the case, because it does seem like Oliver might legitimately kind of a thing for her, especially because for her, she's kind of like, you need a drink or something, don't you? He's like, not really, she's like, more so than it's not even really just a drink, you also need a friend, because he doesn't have that, Oliver doesn't actually have friends when you actually break it down. Because that was kind of something I kept bringing up about Felicity. Felicity, Billy kept asking, oh, let me meet your friends and everything like that. Kind of get to know the other side of your life. And it's like, well, honestly, like Felicity, from what we know about Felicity's life, she doesn't actually have any friends. Oliver sure as hell doesn't. He have these people around him that are like a family, but outside of that, outside of working his family, he doesn't really associate with anyone. He doesn't have any other friends. I mean, the friends he does have are also superheroes too. He has Barry, he has Sarah, but it's like, Vixen too. It's like he has a lot of people, but they're like work friends, not like legit like, oh yeah, let's hang out friends. Well, I don't know, because Barry's kind of like a, oh, let's hang out type of friends. I don't know. And side note, now I'm thinking about that, I'm surprised that never came up. It's like, whoa, Barry Allen knows Oliver Queen. Did that ever come up in any crossovers? I don't think they ever did. I mean, I guess granted, it's like, it's a different city, so maybe like a lot of everyday people may not know. Because to me, it'd be like, hey, seeing Bruce, like the exact example would be like seeing Bruce Wayne walking through Metropolis. It'd be like, hey, isn't that Bruce Wayne? It's like, yeah, that's Bruce Wayne. Like, even in Metropolis, even though Metropolis isn't Gotham, you still know who Bruce Wayne is. When you think being as big as they were, the Queens, about it, I guess the Queens are not that the Wayne level, because the Queens are probably what you classify as millionaires, and different things have the Waynes being the Queens are worth like millions, but I'm sure like, because depending on which media you go through, like whichever adaptation of Batman, he has millions. I think in the older stuff, but like in more recent stuff, he's a billionaire. I think I referenced that in something else, because it was like in Arkham City, he says that to Vicky Vale. He's like, Vicky, I'm a billionaire with a B. Millionaires are so last year. So I'm sure there's like even amongst them, there's a gigantic leap in value also. And also, side note, whether, like I said, it's kind of iffy on whether or not Batman exists in this particular universe. I mean, they reference Gotham and Supergirl, but even that's being on a different Earth, but they never outright said like, oh, Batman. So that's never been a thing here. But it's also because like Green Arrow is supposed to be kind of this DC universe's Batman, so they might not introduce a Batman in it, because it's kind of like, it kind of takes away the factors of us making Green Arrow more like Batman, very vigilante and kind of like a little bit darker, because it shares because it's something, like it never clicked in my head until like other people start pointing out, the show has a very similar tone to Batman, because I don't know Green Arrow like that from the comic books, because this Green Arrow is very different from the Green Arrow that you know from the TV shows, like the cartoons, or even Smallville. Like that was a little bit more go-lucky kind of type of Green Arrow, but this Green Arrow is very dark and moody and just kind of like life kind of sucks and I'm trying to make the best out of it type of thing. But once again, I'm going well overboard. Another thing I wanted to point out in this episode was the fact is that Oliver used that net thing he shot from his arrow. Like, is it me or they really kicked that up this season? Because I kept bringing that up before. It's like, oh, when is he going to get wacky arrows? And he kind of has them this season. It's like a parachute arrow and different stuff. It's kind of like, holy crap. And now, like, he has that. It's some kind of, like, net that stopped bullets. I mean, it didn't stop a missile, but still, I mean, whatever kind of explosionary bullet or whatever it was that the Vigilante used. But it was it was nice kind of seeing them crossing up. And I do like the fact that you didn't get his identity reveal. But now, because initially I was thinking like, okay, I threw the ADA out there as kind of a potential Prometheus. But now I'm kind of like, nah, he must be that guy. He must be Vigilante, because we kind of seen a darker side to him before. Like he was in there talking to one of those suspects because basically her and her gang are robbing the place. I like the masks that they use. Just kind of those skull masks they had were pretty awesome. I just like the designs of them and everything. But he was talking about, fact is, it's like, she's like, oh, I'm not, you can go to hell or whatever. He's like, I've been to hell. And that should tell you that I'm someone that you shouldn't mess with. And he slams the table, or particularly the mask on the table, and kind of scares her a little bit. And then like this kind of like evil-ish smile kind of cracks across his face. I'm like, okay, that's a little, ugh. So making me think maybe he is, I don't think he's the ADA. I think I referred to him as that, but the DA. I think they learned his name, but I'm pretty sure he might be Vigilante, because we didn't ever get him unmasked in this episode. He apparently beat the crap out of Curtis, because Curtis got his face is all messed up. He's got blood in his teeth and everything. So that kind of sucked. And plus, like, he caught Artemis off guard, which begs the question, because we end up seeing what we see at the end of the episode. It's like, is she even trying? Because the fact is she's working with Prometheus, maybe she's actually a lot more skilled than she's letting on, but she's acting kind of a little like, oh, I'm kind of an amateur at this, just to like get Oliver off guard, because it's like, oh, they don't even suspect a thing. So now that's the interpretation, like, how long has she been working with Prometheus? Was it since she kind of dropped, since Laurel got revealed to be like the Black Canary? Could that be like, once that was kind of out there, she kind of tried to find her own way and then met up with him? Maybe that's why she's a little more in tune with the bow, because of Prometheus. Maybe Oliver thought he kind of brought her on to using the bow, but more so than, like I said, I get the feeling she's probably hiding her real skills and whatnot. Just because, like, once again, bringing it up into it is Young Justice, because that was a whole thing, because there was a darker side to Artemis's character in regards of the TV show too. Like, her sister was a villain, actually. I think the villain Tigress. Because I think even comic book wise, because apparently I didn't notice that Artemis was actually something added afterwards. She's kind of one of those characters that was like, because she did so well in Young Justice and people liked her, maybe that was the case, but that ended up becoming a character written into the comic books. But if I remember correctly, one of the people that was Tigress ended up, I think her name was Artemis Cook. If I could be remembering that wrong. It's something I read a while back. So I don't know, maybe that's what's going on here, where it's kind of like she's really Tigress in this universe, but she's playing the role of being like, oh, along with them or something. It's like, but why would you? Because is this all like a sense of revenge? Because she brought it up like last episode, how she blames Oliver because it's like, you didn't help out with my whole family situation. So maybe in some shape or form, she's working with Prometheus to kind of get her revenge. That was the whole reason to get close to this team, to kind of find out more about them, to kind of wipe them out. Because that's also, if that's the case, then does that mean Prometheus did know about Oliver's identity beforehand? Before even Tobias told him? Because there's so many different ways to interpret that, like what that could all mean, and like, that's the only thing I could think of is like why she would join with him. Because out of anyone, everyone's had their problems, but it seemed like out of anyone, she was the one kind of quick to push Oliver away. I don't know, it seems like maybe her reasoning for doing that last episode, seeing like, oh, she was the most hurt by it, was because she wanted to kind of like, the point is to kind of destroy Oliver, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually, like just kind of crush his spirit and then crush his body afterwards. Kind of attack him mind, soul, and body type of thing. Destroy him on all three fronts. Maybe that's the point. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm inferring from him. Because something I didn't even think about last episode. Because it's like, I don't think I brought it up because I was like, I knew the whole Lance situation. I was like, that's too much of it. They're making it too obvious. So it's got to be like a setup or something. And it never clicked in, because the whole situation with the list last episode, it never clicked in my head. It's like, oh yeah, like, because I think that was kind of the thing where I was debating whether or not Prometheus knew his identity beforehand or not, was because it's like all the people he's attacking on the list. It's like, oh, obviously Prometheus had to have known the list, but then it's like, I don't remember if I brought it up, but definitely this episode put it more perspective for me. It's like, oh yeah, all he had to know was like the people that the Vigilante went after to know, okay, that's what it was. It was like, it wasn't like it was pulling from, it was pulling from everyone on the list, because it was like, oh, those are the people that the Vigilante in the past killed. So more so than anything, recognizing that the Green Arrow and the Vigilante were the exact same person. Or maybe in Prometheus's mind, maybe Prometheus already knew that, or maybe like I said, there's so many if ands you can like interpret that. It's not clear cut as to whether what Prometheus did know, or well, we know what Prometheus does know, because now it's like, oh yeah, the reason why they were sending it to Lance, what made Lance kind of think himself to be Prometheus, because like I said, Prometheus is pretty skilled. I was like, I don't see Lance doing all that, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, maybe there could be something more to it. But the thing is that Prometheus definitely knows his identity, because it's like, the reason why they chose Lance specifically is because it was Prometheus chose to attack someone, kind of destroy a person's reputation, in a sense, close to him, someone attacking someone very close to him. So that was all about, I guess that could also, now I'm rewinding it a little bit, kind of thinking about other things, maybe that could also explain the whole like Prometheus and Artemis fight in the subway last episode. Maybe that was all a front, or maybe partway through their fight before Oliver showed up, they had got to talking and stuff like that. I don't know, or maybe she ended up tracking him down later on, or he confronted her later on. It's like, there's so many questions. I'm wondering, like, why would she join up with him? Like I said, her parents are the only motive I can think of, but maybe there's more to it than that. Something that got thrown out there by the superhero roundup, or superhero SmackDown group, is that, Prometheus represents Oliver kind of having to face his past, because it's like, even with everything he's done, the Vigilante, the Hood, Arrow, being the Green Arrow, even becoming the Green Arrow hasn't distanced his past. Like, even with all he's done, he can't escape his past. His past is a part of him. Even though he tries to change up, become a better person, become the hero that Star City needs, it doesn't change the fact that his past is what it is. So now the question is, like, is Prometheus of like literal ghost of the past kind of there to remind Oliver of his crimes and what he's done, and kind of make him pay for the path that he's going on, going as far as, like I brought up last episode, the sick thing about, like, hey, using all the arrows that he ever used in the past and turning them into those throwing stars. So, and then also, like, because that's kind of going back now to that's an interesting thing about this season. They set up the Thea and Lance like partnership or being friends, like, because like prior to this they've never had like a lot of one-on-one interaction, but this season they definitely kicked it up because she's kind of there for him, because it's like, I think it's some shape or form, because like Thea kind of refers to Lance as kind of family, like, because they've been in a similar situation that Lance is. She definitely has. She's lost a lot. Lost her dad. At one point thought she lost her brother. Lost her mom. It's finding out about Malcolm being her dad. Just like so much of her life has changed drastically over these 4 years. So she definitely knows that, kind of the curveballs that life can send your way. So that's why her and Lance are kind of bonding. And I guess it's supposed to be, in a sense, it could be like, not necessarily replacing Laurel, but kind of be there to kind of help heal that hole in his heart from Laurel being gone. Maybe that's what Thea is kind of representing. She's kind of being like another daughter for him. I guess, he'd be like, for Thea, he could be like, he is like family. So you could think of him almost like an uncle or whatever. So maybe, because he's still struggling with everything, but Thea's like, you gotta go forward for Laurel. It's like, I know things are kind of tough, but like this time, he's really going to try for her sake, and she's going to try to really be there for his sake, and make everything work out, because he went as far as quitting. I mean, it wasn't necessarily just because of the whole like Prometheus thing, but it was also because it's like he lied to Thea, like saying that he had stopped drinking and everything. And it's like, he knew how bad that publicity could fall back on Oliver and Thea if he stayed around. In particular, if the killer is making him think it's like, oh, I'm the throwing star killer. So it's like messing with him mentally. So that isn't going to be good. I mean, especially if that all comes out. Which is, like I said, once again, it's like Susan, I just don't know which way that's going to go. Like I said, there's part of me that hopes she goes about things the right way, but it's like I said, she is giving him his month, but like I said, who knows? Maybe she's just waiting for her moment to strike. But it does seem like even she's kind of getting swept up and kind of like getting to like Oliver. It's probably like the more time they spend together, because he even got to the point, he's like, just call me Oliver. Even the fact is that he's coming to her actually for advice and everything kind of shows you how he's kind of let his guard down around her a little bit. I mean, granted, I know Thea hasn't, because everyone else is kind of like, why would you do that, but still. And this episode, we also had Diggle kind of like a little antsy this episode, just kind of a little super aggro and everything. You end up finding out the reason why is because he wasn't even able to be there for John Jr.'s second birthday party and whatnot. Just because of just having to hide out, because there's like U.S. Marshals waiting outside his house and everything. But luckily, Wild Dog was able to kind of help sneak them there, which it was so adorable seeing him with his son. His son's like, "Oh, Daddy, you're sweating." He's like, "You want cake?" It's like, yeah. It's like him and his son are so cute. That's just the most adorable thing. And which at the same time, it's so adorable, but it's also sad at the same time. It's like, but that should be your little girl, Sarah, not your little son. Like I said, depending on how time works, maybe he'll, at the end of it, the day when it all plays out, he will eventually have both. I don't know. Like I said, who knows what's going to happen with legends of the fact is that, he ended like John. Like I said, there was no mention of Sarah, not that I can think of, so it's kind of hard to say whether or not Sarah just wasn't there at the time or something happened to Sarah. I mean, obviously the Flashpoint thing, but like I said, I don't know. Maybe Sarah something that maybe with that type of future, it was not possible for Sarah to exist, but maybe it's like if things work out and play out a certain way, it's like, okay, Sarah can be born. So, I mean, hopefully it works out like that. I'd rather you have, because it's a little sad because it's not really that big of a deal, but it's kind of like, because in a way, it's almost like that one life that existed, Sarah's like just disappeared and like no longer exists. So it's a little sad when you really get all existential about it. It's like, but at the same time, you can look at it as being like, well, that essence, that life that was Sarah's exists in John, so it's, I don't know. Like I said, too existential to get about, go on about it, but. So that also shows us Wild Dog and, Diggle kind of bonding together too, becoming friends and everything. So that was it's kind of interesting. It's, like I said, this season's kind of presenting very interesting pairings and not just like in a relationship manner. It's also just kind of like just partner up manners. Like I said, like bringing up like Thea and Lance. It's a very interesting season where we get to see kind of new relationships build between the characters that we've come to know so far. So, and also I want to note about the flashbacks. We had Constantine, because basically they've been torturing Oliver for a week, but he hasn't given him anything. And Kovar is basically saying, like, you realize the Bratva are not the good guys in all of this, that basically they're just using you, right? They're talking about the fact that they want to blow up my casino, but that's just because they can get a cut in all of this by kind of the money they're taking away from me is just going to go into their whole pockets. Like, they're not good guys. He's like really like good and evil. It's all in the perspective. Because interestingly enough, like, Tiana, the girl he met, he made the promise to take down Kovar for last season in the flashbacks. Apparently her mom works for him, but it's like Tiana told Oliver that Kovar was a monster, but it's like, why would her mom be working for him? Well, her and Vlad's mom. Because you almost do completely forget about Vlad. I mean, it's because, he died pretty early on. Well, not really early on last season. But, I mean, he just kind of died because, they kind of sent... they kind of the soldier guy kind of manipulated him into attacking Oliver. But nevertheless, so it's interesting how that works. But I was very impressed when Oliver stabbed him with the knife in the head and then held the other one to his neck and was about to get out of there. But then him and Kovar kind of knuckled up. And I was like, oh, for a little while he was holding his own. And then Kovar proceeded to kick his ass. So, and then the dude who offered telling Oliver to blow up the casino in the first place shows up and is like, oh, if you don't leave them in one piece, you won't get your cut. It's like, okay, so apparently the Bratva made a deal with Kovar. So the question is, like, what's probably going to come up next episode is like, did Anatoly know? Like, what? Because now Oliver's confused. Like, okay, so I thought Kovar was a bad guy, but now you guys are actually working with. So the question is, who's actually the bad guy in all this? Well, it'd be kind of interesting if we find out if Oliver ends up being like, you know what? No, like maybe this ends up creating a thing for Oliver where it's like he sees evil as it is. It's like he felt like, okay, like, the Bratva was like a necessary evil that it's like, hey, they're doing justice and stuff like that. But at the same time, maybe he's like, if they work or even turn a blind eye to some of the stuff that Kovar does. I mean, really, because it breaks down to like, I feel like there's probably split amongst the Bratva. I kind of brought that up before with Victor. Maybe there's some people in the Bratva that are cool with Kovar. Then you have people like Anatoly who aren't. It just kind of like, depending on everyone's position, like maybe some of the higher ups are, but some of the lower end people aren't really tight with Kovar like that. So it's going to be interesting because maybe when it's all said and done, Oliver switches his perspective and decides to bring them both down, both Kovar and the Bratva. So, I mean, really, we'd have to wait to see. I am very curious to find out where that all leads, because what makes it so interesting is the fact of the matter is that this all means that, because we all know where it all ends. It all ends with Oliver going back to Lian Yu, because that's the question. With everything being said and done, when you're back on that island, like when you're done in Russia, what does persuade him to go back to the island? why not go straight home afterwards? Why go back to the island first? Maybe after everything gets settled and it's just like, he's like, no, he's not strong enough. Maybe he has to harden his conviction. So he spends whatever time is left between what goes down in Russia and him being picked up in the beginning of season 1. Maybe that time he spends training, trying to harden himself, so, I mean, because when they do pick him up, he is obviously less groomed, because it's kind of like, because last season he was more well kept and everything, like he is present day, just because it's like the fit in amongst the soldiers and whatnot. They had him kind of look like that. So, because I gotta give it up to Philip, because Philip from Superhero Smackdown kind of put it in a very neat perspective of like, this season is kind of the end for Oliver's story, in a sense of like, this is all like one overarching story, that basically this is all about his past, dealing with his past, and in a sense his past coming back to haunt him, because every previous season had the flashbacks and everything, and it dealt with his past. And so, everything else, the show won't be not necessarily constricted by the past, but it's also just like, hey, his new adventures and him moving forward. Yes, the past will come up, but it won't be the main focus. It'll just be him becoming the real person that he's supposed to be, the real true Green Arrow that he's supposed to be, that he'd be more set on his path. It's kind of like, if you want to put it in perspective, I guess it'd be kind of like Superman, like all of Smallville led up to him becoming Superman at the very end. It's like kind of getting to that point, because the plan is, they don't plan on ending it after this being the final season or anything like that. They do have plans for future seasons, so it'd be kind of like, hey, finally stepping in the role of Green Arrow and seeing everything expand, it's just interesting, like a very interesting perspective that I really appreciate. I thought that was kind of neat, putting it in regards of like that. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.